The lifetime memories and adventures of me, Carlos Campos. This is a true story. I'm going to assume that most of y'all know about Muhammad Ali and that Ali fought George Foreman in the fight of the century called the Rumble in the Jungle. In that 1974 fight, Muhammad Ali shocked the world by knocking out George Foreman to win the heavyweight championship of the world. Ali did it by doing something that had never been done before in boxing. Ali leaned against the ropes and covered up his face and body and allowed George Foreman to hit him as often as he wanted to. Ali's plan was later called the rope-a-dope. Everyone thought Ali's plan was crazy and suicide and that George Foreman would kill Ali. But Ali shocked the world by using his secret plan to get George Foreman to punch himself out and get exhausted. It worked, which enabled Ali to knock out George Foreman. But what I'm going to tell you will shock you, and that's that Muhammad Ali did not invent the rope-a-dope. I did it when I was just 15 years old, 6 years before Ali used the rope-a-dope to upset George Foreman. I admit I didn't do it on purpose, but I did do it first. So Muhammad Ali must have somehow heard that I used the rope-a-dope in 1968 to win my first and only boxing match. He then thought it would work against George Foreman, and it did. I'm now going to tell you the true story involving me and Muhammad Ali. I grew up in the 60s on the south side of San Antonio. At that time, San Antonio was 95% economically and socially segregated into 4 specific areas. The blacks lived on the east side, the poor Hispanics and illegals lived on the west side, the mostly lower middle class white and Hispanics lived on the south side, while the rich white people lived in the uppity north side. Growing up on the south side, even as a kid, I knew that I lived in a lower economic and social side of town than the rich north siders. I and my friends were intimidated by the north siders. We thought they were somehow better than us poor south siders. Even though I never dealt with or met a north sider, as I never went to the north side, west side, east side, as most all people stayed in their side of town. That's the way it was in the 60s in San Antonio, and I'm sure in cities all over America. But when I was 13 years old and had just finished 8th grade, I got a big shock when my father told our family that we were moving to the north side where the rich white people lived. I could not believe it. I loved the south side where all my friends lived, and I would know no one on the north side. And I wondered how the rich white north siders would welcome a Hispanic south sider coming into their neighborhood. When we moved, I was going to start 9th grade at a brand new high school, Churchill. I was nervous that first day of school, but what saved me was sports. I'd always done good in sports, and being on the football team enabled me to meet and socialize and make friends with my teammates. I must say I never encountered any racism from my white classmates. One of my first friends was football teammate Ralph, whose father was a rich home builder. Ralph was not a good athlete. He was short and stocky, but he had lots of desire and determination to succeed in sports. His father had him taking boxing lessons, wrestling lessons, and pushed him to work out all the time. Ralph called me one night and wanted me to go with him as he was going to fight in a boxing tournament. I and another friend, Mike, agreed to go watch the fight. And Ralph picked us up in a brand new, shiny red Mustang that his rich father had just bought him. We got into Ralph's new Mustang, and I asked Ralph where the boxing tournament was. And when Ralph sat on the west side, I knew we were heading for trouble, as white boys did not go to the west side in a new Mustang, especially at night. Ralph and Mike did not have a clue that we were heading into a dangerous part of town where rich white boys were high risk to get mugged, robbed, or worse. As soon as we pulled into the west side in Ralph's new red Mustang, we saw all the heads turn by the locals, who were shocked and amused to see rich white boys in their neighborhood. We got nothing but dirty, hostile looks. I was worried that we were not going to get out alive. I also knew that boxing was not a social, fun sport on the west side. It was a career opportunity for poor Hispanics to fight their way out of the ghetto, as most all West Side boxers had dreams of becoming professional boxers. I dreaded having to watch Ralph get the tar beat out of himself, but I really respected his guts for having the willingness to do what he was going to do. When we pulled into the parking lot of the gym where the tournament was being held, I told Ralph and Mike not to make eye contact with anyone and told them the danger we were in. When we walked into the gym, we were told to ask for Mr. Gonzalez, who was managing all the fights. When Ralph told him that he was here to fight in the tournament, Mr. Gonzalez, a mean, hostile, angry, unfriendly-looking man, a retired boxer, glared at Ralph and asked, "What boxing club are you from?" Ralph was confused and said, "Churchill High School." Laughter and mumbling words could be heard as he was being called a pendejo gringo and other Hispanic cuss words by most everyone there. Mr. Gonzalez then smiled in a very sarcastic way and asked me and Mike, if we were going to fight too. We both quickly said no, that we were just Ralph's friends. More laughter from the crowd. He then told Ralph to get his ass in one of the two lines, as he was forming two lines of people who would fight each other. Me and Mike looked at each other, and our facial expressions told each other that Ralph was going to get a beating. Suddenly, Mr. Gonzalez turned around and yelled, "I need another fighter." He immediately turned around and looked at me and said in a very hostile, challenging way, "Will you fight?" The referee was smirking and grinning, and I could tell he was daring me to say no, so he could call me a pendejo coward. Time froze, and I felt countless eyes looking at me. But instinctively, my pride told me I could not say no, so I faked a confident yes. He then pushed me real hard, almost knocking me down into one of the two lines. I saw Ralph with a big smile on his face, apparently happy that I would also be fighting. And Mike was scared to death that he was going to be asked to fight. He later said no way he would have fought. I was now in a state of shock, wondering how I got into this mess. My brain was trying to figure out a game plan to deal with my opponent. I was a boxing fan, and my father had taken me with him to many local professional fights. So I planned to try and copy Muhammad Ali's style and jab and move, and hopefully hit him with my best right hand when I saw an opening. But then I realized that in all sports there was a winner and a loser. But that in all the sports that I played, it was only the loser's pride that was hurt. But boxing was different, as it would not just be my pride that would be hurt if I lost. Because if I lost, that meant I got the tar beat out of me. That was not something I wanted to experience, so I told myself that I had to win. There were about 15 guys in each line, and I tried to figure out who I was going to fight. It appeared that I was going to fight a guy much taller and bigger than me. That didn't seem fair, but it was what it was. Ralph was up first, and when the announcer introduced Ralph Smith, an independent from Churchill High School, the crowd went crazy, yelling and screaming for blood. They all wanted the white boy to get killed, and he was called every Hispanic cuss word in the world. But Ralph got lucky, as neither he or his opponent threw any punches. All they did was circle each other around the ring. The crowd was booing in anger, as they wanted and expected some action. It was a boring fight and called a draw, as the crowd was so angry they would not stop booing. I was next, and I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone as I walked into the ring. And when my name was announced, and the crowd was told that I was also from Churchill High School, the boos and cussing and vulgar name-calling was so loud it caused the gym to vibrate. The referee was still pissed off that Ralph and his opponent did not fight. He grabbed me and my opponent by the neck and said, "If y'all don't fight, I will personally beat the shit out of both of you." It was now showtime. The bell rang, and my opponent charged at me with both arms swinging like a windmill. I quickly covered up, and he backed me against the ropes and was punching me with both hands, but I was blocking all his punches. But I'm sure it looked like I was getting killed, and the crowd was loving it. I could not get him off me, so I decided to take a knee to get him off me. But the referee did not do his job and send my opponent to a neutral corner, and instead started counting me out. And when he got to 8, I jumped up, and he started bombing me again, punching me with both hands, but I continued to block most of his punches. I still could not get him off me, so I again kneeled down, and again the referee didn't do his job and did not send my opponent to the neutral corner. And again, when his count got to 8, I jumped up so I wouldn't get counted out. As I stood up, I got bombed again, so I took my 4th knee and kept yelling at the referee to send my opponent to a neutral corner. He ignored me, but I would not let the referee count me out, so I jumped up at 8. I ended up going down 5 times before the bell finally rang to end the first round. The crowd loved the first round as their boy appeared to be beating the tar out of me. But I was not hurt, as I felt I had blocked almost all of his punches. But he did hit me a lot on the top of the head. That didn't hurt, but I thank God for making me hard-headed. LOL. I was humiliated as I walked to my corner, and I heard Mike and Ralph yell, "He's killing you," and that I did not throw a single punch. I yelled at them that I was not hurt and that the referee was stupid and did not do his job and make my opponent go to a neutral corner whenever I took a knee. They didn't seem to care about my complaints. I was pissed off, and my competitive nature came out, and I was very determined to get revenge on my opponent in the second round. I decided to glare at my opponent and let him know that it was payback time. But when I stared at my opponent, I was shocked at what I saw. My opponent was hunched over, his tongue was hanging out, he couldn't breathe. He looked totally exhausted. He could not even pick up his arms. He had punched himself out and had no energy left. I felt like a shark in a pool of blood. He was ripe for a serious whooping, and I was going to give it to him. When the bell rang for round 2, I went right at him, and he leaned against the ropes and covered up, and I punched him nonstop with both hands, as I was fresh, as I had not thrown a single punch in the first round. Within a minute, he went down, and I stood over him waiting for him to get up so I could continue to pound him. But he refused or could not get up. He was counted out by the referee, and I was declared the winner. I was so happy and excited about my comeback victory. I had no idea that I had just invented the rope-a-dope that Muhammad Ali would use 6 years later when he upset and knocked out George Foreman. I then saw a big trophy and was told that it was for the fighter who had the most exciting fight. I got excited, as I love trophies, and I thought I might win it as I had the only knockout of the night. But then mariachi music started blasting. I didn't know what was going on. Suddenly, I saw these 2 little kids, maybe 4, 5 years old, coming towards the ring, both wearing very colorful Mexican robes and bobbing and weaving like professional fighters. They were incredibly impressive looking boxers. They had professional technique, which was amazing since they were so little. I later heard they were local phenoms who were destined to both become world champions. They then fought each other and put on a show that thrilled the crowd. They both got the big trophy for putting up the most exciting fight of the night. We then decided we better quickly and quietly leave before we got confronted by some mean locals. As we were leaving, I felt the halo around my head, and I kept trying to touch it, and Ralph and Mike asked me what I was doing. I asked them if I had something around my head. They said no, but apparently all the punches I took to my head had caused my head to swell up, and I felt an invisible halo around my head that felt so real. My back also started to hurt, as I apparently rubbed it very hard against the ropes while I was doing the rope-a-dope. Ralph and Mike later said I had stripe burns all over my back. We happily made it home to the north side without incident, but with a great, exciting lifetime memory we had just experienced. But this story is not over, because 11 years later, in 1981, something incredible happened. I had some friends over to watch a big nationally televised fight between the number 3 ranked middleweight in the world, 18-year-old Tony Ayala, who was from San Antonio. He was 22-0 with 20 knockouts, and if Tony Ayala won the fight, he was going to fight Roberto Duran, a legend. And then the winner of that fight was going to fight the winner of the Sugar Ray Leonard versus Tommy Hearns fight. This fight was going to be exciting. As the fight was about to begin, I jokingly bragged to my friends how I retired from boxing undefeated, as I had won my only fight, having gotten up 5 times to win my fight by TKO. They laughed and did not believe my story, so I dug up my newspaper clippings of the fight to show them. But when I looked at it, I saw something that shocked me. Those little kids that had fought that night were Tony Ayala, and we were about to watch him fight, and his brother Mike Ayala, who was ranked #1 in the world in the bantamweight division. Wow, I now bragged that I had not only retired undefeated, but I had fought on the same card as two future world champions, Tony Ayala and Mike Ayala. I'm sorry to say that although Tony Ayala won that fight, he never became world champion or even fought for a world title, because right after the fight, he was arrested for rape and he had to spend the next 30 years in prison. He died recently due to drug overdose. His brother Mike Ayala also never became world champion, but he did fight once for the world title but lost. A great movie was made about them and their father, Tony Ayala Sr., who made them both world-class fighters. But their father got a lot of criticism for raising what many people called pit bulls, who developed serious emotional problems because they were exposed to so much violence from the time they were born. The movie is called Price of Glory. I strongly recommend you watch it, as it's a great movie, and it was filmed in San Antonio. Its star was Jimmy Smits, who also starred in L.A. Law. The moral of this story was that you never know whose path you will cross in life's adventures and when you will make a lifetime memory, like I did on that Friday night back in October of 1968. The end.